You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay Schiss, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Back to another episode of the Therapist Question Box. We are here and hoping to answer your mental health questions, whatever they may be, whether it's mental health, relationship, questions that you have around diagnoses, anything. Write in and ask us what your questions are, and we want to be a resource for you. So today I have with me Janzen Dean. Janzen, good to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Yes,
always fun to have you. And today we're talking about vulnerability. And we'll just launch into the question, and then I'm going to talk to you about how you're feeling about the question, because we discussed a little bit beforehand, but I want to bring that up to our listeners. Mm-hmm. The question is, how can I be vulnerable in a relationship without feeling weak or afraid of getting hurt?
Right.
Why does this question feel important to you?
Because I think it's a pretty common question. So if someone hasn't been in therapy, if they've been really unlucky with who they've been dating, married to, and they've found themselves in a relationship that's less than ideal, I think that they'd be asking that question at some point. And when you are asking that question, I would imagine it's pretty urgent. There's a lot of pain and stress there.
Yes.
And a desire to improve both like themselves on an individual level as well as within the relationship. And so I just think it's a very real question, and I think there's a lot we can explore with it.
Yeah.
It's not just a question that's a quick answer. You can slap a Band-Aid on it and fix it. I think there's lots of different directions that we can speak to.
Good. I like that. Yeah. Before we started, he was just saying, I want to give this question the proper weight, because you think it, because you can see, like you said, there's a lot to it. So, So how can I be vulnerable in a relationship without feeling weak or afraid of getting hurt? Why do you think people associate vulnerability with weakness?
I think it's a societal norm. I think we're making progress in the world today, but I think that some of us are still holding on to this idea in this individualistic society that you shouldn't be vulnerable because you should be more generative. You should be more productive. And solution-oriented. And I think that people just think that vulnerability is a weakness because there's nothing productive to do with it. Or they may think it's synonymous with complaining. And so it's just viewed very negatively because they don't really know the purpose of vulnerability.
Okay. So it can be viewed negatively because there's not a solution. It can be seen as it can be seen as negative.
Yeah.
And that maybe what do we do with it?
Yeah.
Right? Like there's not a solution. What are we going to do with it? So it just feels like we're just I don't know, spinning, going down the bottom of the drain and spinning and just kind of maybe complaining. But and also I think people feel like it's exposing. It feels like, I'm like a filleted fish here, and you can do whatever you want with me.
Right.
And that feels really uncomfortable. So no, thank you.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to talk about. It's just like what gets in the way, because there's a lot of things we can say to speak to helping people understand the purpose of vulnerability. But I think if we start by like discussing what gets in the way of vulnerability, I think that helps us have a better understanding of what it is. Okay. So I think the biggest thing that I sat with this week when I was pondering the question is a lot of us struggle to use vulnerability if we've never used it in relationships. So this could be both in your family, with your parents, siblings, or this could also be romantic relationships. If you've never used vulnerability, to me that suggests that there's unfamiliarity, or that it's a skill that can be built and you can improve at it. So it's similar to like a new job. If you step into a new job, you're bound to have lots of questions, not necessarily know what you're doing, know the purpose of all the things that you're asked to do at a job. But that with time, once you gain more knowledge, there's levels and levels to know the benefits of the job or ways to optimize it.
Sure. I like that. That there's once we try it, then we know it better. But it's like with
Right.
anything. I think about a new job, and I think that transition period is the worst. Like it doesn't matter if it's your dream job.
Yeah.
You don't know where the bathroom is, and you don't know what the systems are, and you don't know how things function. So it's hard.
Right.
And we have to give ourselves that space of saying, okay, this is uncomfortable and I'm going to do it anyways.
Right.
But why would people do it? Like, why does it matter?
Ultimately, if you are not vulnerable, especially like in a romantic relationship, you're depriving you and your partner of emotional intimacy.
Okay.
Which I would argue is more important than the physical intimacy. We all love the fun stuff. It gives like a really quick thrill. But ultimately, in a long-lasting and healthy relationship, you want those little moments of interjecting emotional intimacy. And part of the recipe for getting there is both partners back and forth using that vulnerability.
Okay. So both partners using vulnerability. We can't just have one without the other, right?
Right.
Do you think that we can sometimes get to this, in the name of vulnerability, we can go to oversharing or being complaining or, tell me your thoughts on that, because I think it can seem that way. I've had couples in my office, and the one says, she just always is complaining. She just is negative, and she's just negative. And she is saying, I just want to share with him what's going on in my heart. And there's a lot of fear, and there's some angst, and there's some hard things. Yes. So it might feel like I'm negative, but I'm not trying to be negative. I'm really trying to share. So can you see how our perception of it can be really different too?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it can be tricky, depending on the relationship that you're in, personality differences between the couple, different circumstances. Like if you are very fast paced and like you and your partner are just kind of ships passing in the night just because you're busy with kids, jobs, different things. I think all those can be taken, as factors. But ultimately, I think with the vulnerability, you're going to want to just see that it's not going to cause problems. It may feel awkward, but ultimately it's not there to cause problems. It's there to, in reality, it's going to resolve problems, but it's going to have a very deep and mature conversation around that vulnerability. If you're just, firing off shots randomly, kind of like a shotgun blast of complaining to your partner and just unloading on them, then I would say that that's not vulnerability, because you're just talking for the sake of getting it out there and not the only one that knows. But when you sense that your partner has signaled safety and that there is that time and ability to talk about these kinds of things in a relationship, then I think that's when we can take advantage, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It's not like vulnerability is oh, you're amazing at this. I've never seen anyone do it better. The key to vulnerability is to simply just try and show up. It can be messy. And that's thankfully why, like, when our partners are signaling that safety, if it is messy, our partner can help us, and that conversation will keep flowing as our partners create space for our messy vulnerability.
Okay. So if I'm a partner and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, I know my partner's maybe trying to create or being vulnerable. They want to be vulnerable. They have been vulnerable. How does a partner show up in safety? I mean, when you talk about safety, I think, in therapy, we talk about safety and we're like, yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
We know what safety looks and feels like. But I think to the general population, like when you say safety, what does it mean to show up in a safe place for your partner that's trying to be vulnerable?
Yeah. If you want your partner to use vulnerability with you, to have that deeper emotional connection, you want to be less reactive. You want to make what they're expressing less about you, more about the coupleship, the us factor. So I'd say less reactivity, active listening. So not simply just listening to hurry and respond, but listening to really sit with, internalize, let the empathy kick in. I think those things would be in line with signaling to your partner that it's a safe place to do this and that you are a safe person to be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
So it's like this gentleness, like it's almost like you've created like some sort of reverence around what is to be shared.
Yeah. I love that, like a reverence. I think of being like a soft place to land.
Yeah.
That when someone shares something that I'm not reactive or I'm not going into judgment and I'm not trying to solve,
Yeah.
but I'm able to just sit with
Yep.
and I'm able to provide presence. And that's it. Like we don't have to have these amazing responses, or we don't have to have a solution. In fact, it's better if we don't, right?
Yeah.
It just to provide presence and support. I mean, it's pretty incredible what that alone can do for people when they're being vulnerable with us. And again, sometimes it's us having to control our own experience. Like, oh man, they just said that's what's going on for them. That feels hard for me. But instead of turning it about you, being willing to sit with it. Because when it turns to be about you, all of a sudden that person that's vulnerable is like, oh, all of a sudden my needs no longer matter. This is now about you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
Which we don't want.
We don't want. So safety is really presence, staying steady, and the willingness to be with somebody in their vulnerability and their because again, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay.
It is.
We don't want to lie to ourselves and say it's easy, it's fun, because I don't think it really ever is.
Yeah.
Even in healthy relationships, when it's used, it's still never easy, but it's worth it.
So why is it worth it?
Because
if it's not easy, it's not fun.
Yeah.
Why am I going to do it? Right? What's the purpose really? Like what's it? And when you said that emotional intimacy, it creates emotional intimacy. But what if people are like, you know what? We're just going through life. We're just doing the thing. We got kids, we got families, we got jobs, whatever it is. What really would be the motivator if you haven't had emotional vulnerability in relationships to start trying to include that?
Just to make sure that each partner is seen. Because if you truly love your partner, I would hope that you love the authentic version of your partner. You don't just love the sliver that pops up here when you see her doing this thing or see him doing this thing. You love the whole person. And so I think without that vulnerability, you may say that you're loving your partner, but you don't know what is there to love. You don't know what else you can embrace. You don't know what else you can wrap your arms around. And so to me, it suggests that, yes, you may be busy and you may have other priorities in life, but it can be really powerful and beautiful when we help our partners be in authenticity. When we offer that ourselves and when we help them offer that authenticity, I think we're one step closer to being vulnerable.
I love that. And I also think it starts, like if one partner can do it and can say like, I'm willing to be vulnerable. I'm willing to say the hard thing or say something that maybe isn't it's not my best hour. This is not my finest thought or the finest thing I've ever done. Right.
Yeah.
But share it. And that when you can demonstrate that, I think it gives permission for the other person to be vulnerable as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I've seen that. And to get a little personal, because it's something that I've been working on, like in my own relationship, it's hard at times going from being therapist Janzen to normal Janzen. Some days are easier to kind of take that hat off and switch roles. But I've noticed when my relationship is lacking, it's likely that it's taken me a little bit longer to switch back into regular Janzen and learn that it's okay to need help. It's okay to talk about myself because I'm so used to being into normal therapist Janzen where I'm the one that has the answers. I'm the one that helps. I don't really become vulnerable. And so I think it's helped me a lot in my own personal life when I've got back into that role of just realizing that at the end of the day, I'm just a normal young guy who has a loving girlfriend and she wants to hear from my heart. She doesn't want to hear from therapist Janzen. She wants to hear from me. And so I noticed if I wasn't offering vulnerability and I wasn't bringing my full self out there because she could handle it, I was essentially not giving her the chance to love another part of me that she was already ready to love. So it was really me adding all these protections and defense mechanisms that the second, I started to be vulnerable, I was like, what was I even doing? Like, why was I even so scared? Because she was so impressive in how she handled those very vulnerable parts of me.
Why do you think, like, if you go, and we're talking about you specifically, right? Why do you think that it was like protective? And why do you think you were like, I don't know, I've got to be careful? Like, is that because there's been a past experience where, that wasn't received well, or that's maybe not, again, my the best light shown on me. So that feels, I want her to just see the best in me. We're dating and I want to put my best foot forward. What do you think that was for you?
I think it was a combination of both. Like you had it pretty much right on that. Initially, I know that in my past, I've had poor relationships where it got to a point where I felt like I could no longer be vulnerable because it wasn't handled well. I was criticized for it. We'd take like an emotional problem and it became more of a logical problem. And I'm a big believer that those two should be separate. The emotional problems are emotional problems and they're different ways to handle those things. And so past relationships made me careful. Like I wanted to wait until it was clear that I could use this vulnerability. And I think too, just going back to the idea of just being a new young therapist, I wanted to look more put together. Like I wanted to look competent, even with my girlfriend, which sounds silly to say, but I think I just wanted to initially look strong. Like if I have this cool career that's unique and teaches me all these beautiful life skills,
you better be living it.
Yeah, like embody that. And so I don't think I gave myself a lot of permission to just be normal.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm blessed to have this career, but when I'm not doing the work and in the office, like I'm just the same as any other guy.
Yep. And isn't that true? I mean, I think, when I'll have clients come in and they'll talk to me, like specifically like about teenagers, I'll think, okay, I'll tell them the theory and then I'll say, and now in practice, let me tell you what this looks like in my life. It is not easy. Like the theory is solid. It makes sense. And practice is a whole different ballgame. Yeah. And it's like you said, we're just normal people that have learned some skills, but we're human and we do the same things. And it doesn't mean just because we know the skills, it means we've got it all buttoned up and figured out. And like you said, I'm a normal guy with a cool job and I've learned some skills. And yes, I'm sure it's impacted you, but also you're not perfect for sure. None of us are.
Yeah. And I think part of me just craves that, like returning to normalcy, just because this job can be so heavy and it's so serious.
Yes.
Everything is taken very seriously and, we're trying to prevent bad things from happening in people's lives. And so I think ultimately got to the point where I saw that my girlfriend could offer that safety and having tough conversations about what I'm struggling with, what I'm feeling. And I just started to crave switching back to that role of being cared for, being nurtured.
And you allowed it.
Allowed it.
Yeah.
I didn't see it as a weakness. I mean, I think I initially did. Part of me was maybe a little resistant there, but it got to a point where, she would expect that and she would hope that I could offer that vulnerability. And so it prompted me to use my courage to be vulnerable and then have that chance to be nurtured.
Yeah. But what you just said is really cool, is you said a chance to be nurtured.
Yeah.
I think sometimes as men, I think men don't feel like they need nurturing. They feel like that's their job, is to kind of be the strong, steady one. And like, I'm an adult, I don't need nurturing.
Right.
But you just said like, no, I had the chance to be nurtured.
Yeah.
Like we all need nurturing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old we are. It doesn't matter what gender we are. We need nurturing.
Yeah.
We don't grow out of that. And so I love that you recognize like I needed that nurturing and it felt different. It felt loving. It felt connecting. And the thing that I would say, and I wonder, is I would imagine the level of depth of your relationship changed when you were willing to have those protective parts of you kind of settle down and be willing to be vulnerable with your girlfriend. And, it took courage on your part and trust, and she was able to show up well. And I would imagine it changed your relationship. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I think, like you said, there's this personal aspect of what can I do with my protective parts?
Yeah.
Like the parts of me that are so resistant, so fearful. How can I show compassion for those parts and tell those parts to simmer down? It's like, hey, I think it's going to be okay. From what I've seen here, I get why you're scared, but I think it's going to be okay if you can just trust me. And so, if we use a little bit of IFS language, it's a common theory we use here at Therapy Utah. If you can get into that self energy, which is like your best self, that part can go to those more scared parts that are protected and essentially relieve them of their duties. And I think that's something I tried to do, is just how can I help those extreme parts just settle down and trust like the best self in me.
Yeah. And we all have the best self in us. Like it's in there, but sometimes we got to dig through some layers of these other parts of us that are a little bit stronger, maybe a little bit louder. Right.
Yeah. It gets blended. We call it.
Yeah.
A lot of those parts get blended.
Yeah.
And how can we examine all of them and heal the parts and how they interact?
Yeah. So when we think about vulnerability, emotional safety matters. And when we feel that we are accepted rather than judged, I believe we can open up more. How do we do that? Because again, I think it depends on our role. Like as a parent, how do we just accept what our child's saying if it feels threatening or it feels like, oh my gosh, I don't want them to go this direction? How do we not try to redirect and manage? I'm just curious what that looks like for you, because I think the truth is that's really easier said than done. Again, in theory, it's like just accept and don't judge and don't try to critique and don't manage. How do we really just stay present and allow people to feel safe with us?
I think it goes back to the idea that you have a bunch of different parts interacting in you. And like we even just said a second ago, that best self that's full of compassion, full of connectivity, creativity, confidence is there. So if there's going to be a judging part, we just maybe need to kind of shift around, play a little bit of musical chairs of asking that judging part to maybe sit in the back for a moment so that it can witness a really good interaction where that compassionate self that's a little more gentle takes the forefront.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Do you think that judging part has a place? Because again, as a parent, like I'm putting myself in as a parent, and if my child comes to me with a lot of vulnerability and says something that's happening, and I'm like, that's going to be a problem, or that's not going to have an outcome that is going to be positive. I kind of need that judging part that's actually saying like, wait a minute, I need you to recognize this might be something, but maybe it comes after the fact, right? Maybe it comes after the fact. In fact, I was talking to my son and we were talking about when he didn't make the basketball team in 8th grade. And it was a really vulnerable time for him. And I felt the need to talk to him about, I thought, okay, stay present, allow his feelings to come out. But really quickly, I had this part of me that thought, you know what? You didn't make the team because you didn't go to class. And you didn't make the team because you didn't practice. Instead of allowing it and maybe coming back to it at a later time.
Yeah.
And really saying like, but I felt like it was this need in me so strongly as a parent to be like, but look at, like you could have prevented this pain. And I wanted to give it this teaching moment, but I recognize now I tried to teach too quickly. Yeah. I tried to fix too quickly. I tried to give it a teaching moment when really he just wanted connection. He wanted to be seen and understood. And I just really was ready to jump in to try to give this teaching moment. And I've looked back on that and had regrets. Like that was, I missed an opportunity for safety, for connection, and just really holding space for my boy. But it was my own fear of, oh man, if he doesn't learn this lesson, how is this going to show up in other parts of his life?
Right.
And I needed to calm my own nerves around what was going on before trying to teach him.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we can honor that judging part, because that judging part means well.
Totally.
It means to protect. It means to sort out what is not working. But I think there's a time and place, and ultimately hearing it, when you share that, I appreciate you sharing that. The thought that comes to mind is it's his life.
That's right.
Like if you want him to learn, then he will learn on his own terms, right? It does you no good to get all involved and manage his life if it's ultimately he's the one that's going to be making those steps going forward. And so I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And sometimes we have to get over our own discomfort around the people we love's possible discomfort. Yeah. So again, we try to teach, but we also are trying to manage our own discomfort, right? Because watching him was uncomfortable for me. And I thought, I'm sure, again, I was trying to help him. I also think I was trying to protect myself from more of this discomfort for him, right? That I was feeling on his behalf. So I think, again, stepping back and just letting it sit and letting it be uncomfortable, and we can sit in it and I can just witness what's going on for you in this vulnerable moment. I don't have to solve. I don't have to tie a bow around. I don't have to have a teaching moment. I can just sit with it.
Right.
That's uncomfortable, but it requires that discomfort for safety and for deeper connection.
Right.
Yeah.
A couple of phrases that come to mind. The first one that has given me a lot of grace and peace is this idea that if you could have done better, you would have.
Yes.
So it's going back to the situation with your son. If he could have done better with class attendance and all of his responsibilities, he would have, but he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to accept the fact that he is where he's at. And then you integrate all those parts and you try to bring the best one forward to be loving. But that's helped me a lot.
Yes.
If I notice I'm judging or very critical, whatever it is, if I could have done better, I would have.
And
but at the time, I didn't have the capacity for it.
Yes. And I also think that same thing comes back to me or comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I would have shared more with my girlfriend initially, I would have. Right. But I was doing the best I could.
Yes.
And if I would have been able to let it sit and then come back to it a couple days later for the teaching moment, I would have. I did the best I could. Now, I don't think that gives us a free pass. Like, okay, we can do whatever we want. We're all good. But I think it does allow us to have some grace for ourselves and say, you know what? Now I know better, I do better. I mean, I love that saying. When we know better, we do better. And that we continue to say, okay, I look at that and I evaluate it. I do some introspection and I am committed to doing better next time, period. And it's going to be messy and I'm going to stumble and I'm going to be, it's going to be clunky. And that's part of being vulnerable is saying, you know what, I'm going to try better next time. And it's a different path than I'm used to taking, but I'm going to try it. And we're going to do our best.
Yep.
So I love that. So Janzen, with this, is there anything else that you feel like, this is really important that we share and that I want to get out there that our listeners hear about vulnerability and the importance of it?
I think another aspect is just the roles that we carry in life. A lot of times it's a huge common theme in therapy is that the roles that you take can cause a lot of stress and confusion in how you show up in each of those roles. Or even just the fact that you are managing multiple roles can cause some of those roles to be strained. And so if you've noticed yourself being placed into roles where you think that vulnerability is not an option, I would just say, maybe try and find a new perspective where you realize that in reality, vulnerability can always be an option. It just depends on how you use it. The complaining may not be effective immediately, or however you envision using that vulnerability. But in reality, vulnerability can be used in any role. I think we're just at times confused to recognize where it holds its value and its place.
Oh, that's so good. That any role that we have, like whether it's as a therapist, you can be vulnerable. As a parent, right? Even when there's like power differentials, like okay, a parent and a child. Even a therapist and their, a client that's coming in. There's a power difference there, but that it can be used regardless in our roles, and that when we understand that, it can be so powerful. I mean, I feel that way when I'm willing to be honest about my own experiences with people. It really it says something to them, like you trust me and that it matters, like this relationship matters, right? And as a parent to say, you know what, I get it. I've had this has happened to me before, or let me express to you what happened to me today where I didn't show up well, and boy, that creates a lot of trust. I love that. I love that reminder.
It's a strength. At the end of the day, it may feel awkward, but because it takes strength, vulnerability is a strength for you and your partner.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And it's really to have emotional intimacy, as you talked about at the beginning, it's necessary. We can have intimacy like you talked about. We can have physical intimacy, but without emotional intimacy, there is a lot missing there. And it requires vulnerability. It requires, I mean, we've heard that vulnerability is what connects us. And if we want to be connected to ourselves and others, it requires vulnerability. We have to do it. And so get comfortable being uncomfortable. This is the deal.
I have some therapist friends, we call it stripping emotionally naked. So
yes.
get comfortable taking your clothes off in reality, but then get comfortable being emotionally naked in front of your partner, because it's going to be for the better.
Yeah, it is going to be for the better. And for a minute, you might feel like you're standing naked on I-15 for everybody to see you. And like, oh my gosh, this is not what I want. But eventually you'll get used to like, oh no, this is actually really empowering, right?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love the reminder that vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually a strength. and that sometimes we have fears of vulnerability from past experiences, and it's normal, and to recognize that, and that when we know better, we do better, we show up better.
Yeah.
And that when we want to love the whole person, and we want our partners or our children, our parents to love all of us as well. And that when we show all of us, that we're connecting with people at a different level.
Yeah.
I love that reminder. And that vulnerability can be used in any role that we have.
Right.
It's any role that we have, we can use vulnerability, and it can be a strength if we allow it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate this because, again, this question about being vulnerable in relationship without feeling weak or afraid of getting hurt, like you said, I think is a question. Wow. That is, so many of us, if we're honest, have felt this. Yeah. And if we haven't, we will feel it at some point in time, right? Yes. Yeah. If we're going to be in relationship, it is inevitable. Yeah. So such a helpful episode and such a helpful question. I appreciate our listener and Janzen, your expertise in this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, listeners, for being with us today. And we hope this was helpful for you. If you found it helpful, please share it with a friend. I'm sure there's someone out there that can relate to this. I'm not sure. I'm positive about that because we all have this experience about vulnerability and the fear of it, and also wanting to use vulnerability and be vulnerable to connect, but knowing it can be difficult. So thank you so much for Janzen for being here. And until next time, take care. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.